I want to talk about a protein now, and you know the evolutionists don't like talking about the flawless structure of the proteins, because talking like this,
nightmare for them.
Yes, it is not good for them, because it shows that they are created, because they show consciousness. And for example, whenever we look at the structure of a protein, we see that it is impossible for a protein to act by chance or coincidence, because it always acts correctly and it has to act correctly. And I want to talk about today is the G proteins, and these are a family. For example, it is also very amazing that the proteins in the cells generally have families, because they don't act alone, they act with their family in a harmony. For example, first of all, the G proteins are inner side of the cell membrane. They are positioned, and they have three subunits: alpha, beta, and gamma subunits. And I want to show you a short film about it. First of all, as you can see now, they bound together. These alpha and gamma and beta subunits are bound together, and they also bound to a bigger protein. It is the transmembrane protein positioned on the cell. And this protein, the transmembrane protein, is the one that makes them have the connection to the outer world, to the outside of the cell, because they never leave the cell. But whenever a signal comes to this transmembrane protein, it changes its conformation and transmits this signal inside of the cell to the G proteins. And this is something very amazing, actually, because what kind of cell signals we are talking about? We are talking about hormones, we are talking about light, we are talking about odor, the scent, the smell we can sense. We are talking about the taste. All these things are the signals for our cells. And whenever these signals come to them, they are in a very small scale. I'm talking about nanometers and micrometer size, very small scale. And at this time, whenever this signal comes, the protein changes the conformation, because there's a special protein created for light. There's a special protein created for scent. Another one for the taste. And whenever you think about the light has degrees, there's dim light or more shining light. It can sense all of them. Whenever you think about the scents, there are hundreds, thousands of scents. And there are special created proteins that are in the cells for these signals. And whenever the researchers, the scientists work about these proteins, they are called the receptors, they see that there are 950 different kind of genes inside the DNA to produce different kinds of receptors. And they don't know many of them. They cannot understand they cannot name them. They cannot understand what are they working for, some of them. And when we come to the G proteins, these protein families, they are some kind of proteins that can switch on or off the processes inside the cell. When the light comes, when the scent comes, or the taste something comes to these cells receptors, they give signal to the G proteins, and G proteins start a process inside the cell. It's like a chart. Many proteins are involved in it. And in each process, DNA has to, there's some kind of information coming from DNA to produce proteins, to make proteins change their phosphors. Another kind of enzymes come into being. And also I want to show you the rest of the film now. As you can see, they are separated. These three units, alpha, beta, and gamma G proteins, are separated from the transmembrane protein, and then they are released. And generally, the beta and the gamma are connected to each other, and alpha is free all the time. And the key compartment, key part, is the alpha G protein. And when there is no signal, they are bound to each other. But when the signal comes, they are released. And as you see also in here, there is a GDP molecule inside under the alpha protein. It is some kind of energy molecule. And whenever it becomes released, it understands that it needs energy. And somehow another enzyme comes and makes its GDP to GTP, and this makes it to have an energy, and then it can start doing the work. How could an enzyme inside the cell know that, yes, this time the alpha protein is free, so I have to go and change this to have some kind of GTPs?
It's impossible.
How could it be possible, an energy molecule, to know that it should turn its the phosphate molecule to 3, increase its number, because the phosphate on the back is the one that gives the energy.
And we talk about unconscious molecules.
Yes, we are talking about only molecules, not human beings, even not animals. We are talking about the proteins. The G proteins under the cell there are 3 G proteins, as you can see in the film. They are one of them is alpha, one of them is beta, and the other one is the gamma G protein. Yes. And these 3 G proteins are bound to a transmembrane protein. And this transmembrane protein is the one that gets the signal from the outer world. And when there is a signal comes, as we said, the signals can be light, the scent, or some kind of taste, or touching, or anything it can be. Mm-hmm. This signal causes the change in the transmembrane protein, and then it releases these G proteins. And when they are released, the alpha subunit is the key one, and it has been released from the beta and gamma subunits. And they're always connected to each other and stay on the membrane's inner side. And as I said, the alpha G protein, you can see also in the film, that carries a GDP molecule. This is the energy molecule, let's say. And this energy molecule becomes active when it is GTP, 3-phosphate, when it has another phosphate added to it. And this is a key element for cell signaling. Cells give signals using these alpha G subunits, and it starts a cascade. Many kind of proteins act during this occur, and then it changes the systems, it makes a cell divide, it makes a cell to produce hormones and do many kind of things. And there is a family of proteins that is called the regulator of G protein signaling family. It is the member of another groups of families called the GTPase activating protein families. The GTPase is the enzyme, a special enzyme that cuts the last phosphate of the GTP to stop the G protein, the alpha subunit. As we said, it is the key of the signaling, and there is a special protein produced, an enzyme produced to stop this molecule. And it has a family, there is a family inside the cell that controls this stopping enzyme. Because it has to be, there has to be something like that, because you are giving a signal, and if you give signals continuously, it can make something different for the cell. It can be harmful, it can be without understanding, there can be problems, but there are special proteins, and this GTPase is the special enzyme that stops the key signaling molecule. But also there is another family called guanine nucleotide exchange factor that stops the other family, not doing their work.
So how they recognize the members of their families. It is very interesting.
They are recognizing each other. Yes. They know which one to stop. Yes, they have IDs and they have eyes. They have they can talk to each other. As for example, when someone tells another one something to the ear, like the children plays, the last children generally forgets what the sentence is, or totally the sentence is
totally different result
all the time. But when we look at them, they are talking to each other, and they can only speak the one with the previous one, not for example, the third one. They have to go the second one to speak. The first one has to speak with second one. You cannot pass the one in the middle. But when you come to the last information, you see that they are all knowing what they have to do, and correctly all the time.
Yes.
Because if they make mistake, we cannot see, we cannot hear. We cannot taste anything. It is impossible for us to survive. But when we look at them, they are acting always correctly. And
they don't have the comfort to say, I don't work today, I don't want to pass this message to the other one. They have to do this.
I don't want to talk with the other proteins.
Yes, it is impossible. Yeah. And when we look at what happens when the alpha G protein activates, I will explain in another program. But it is a very important fact of creation. Just thinking about, there is a protein under the cell membrane that can understand the signal, that can transmit the signal, that can translate the information. There are families controlling its activity. You can understand it's a very important protein because families are controlling its activity or inactivity, because it is a switch for the total cell signaling, and it has the power, Allah gives it to have the power to start a very very enormous systems occur inside the cell.
MashaAllah, yes.
MashaAllah. And inshallah I will explain it in another program.
İnşallah.